Do you two have other than Grindhouse, do you two have a connection of any kind? Or did you just...
That's where we met, and we've stayed in touch.
And
stayed in touch, and I have still been working with Robert and Elizabeth, who Shannon is still very close with, and
we would cross over here and there in Austin or in LA, but all goes back to Grindhouse. So we'll thank Mr. Rodriguez and would you say Ms. Avalon or
Elizabeth and
introducing us.
And they introduced us in 2006 when you and I were down there, Mike.
And that's where we met. Is
that the first time we met?
I believe so. Huh. Yeah, I believe so. I'm fond of saying that I had the luxury of spending 4 months on a movie with Robert Rodriguez sitting on this side of me and Quentin Tarantino sitting on this side of me. Because, am I wrong about this, Shannon? Or was Robert trying to sell Quentin on digital as compared to film? I thought that was part of the process, because Quentin, who worked as an actor on our show, was always there. Mm-hmm. He was always there, and sometimes he'd pick up a second camera. And
he operated the other camera many times.
Yeah. But I was under the impression that and Quentin, Robert had not just done, but I think Sin City might have been the movie that he had just, and that's. Jim, am I correct that that's probably the first all digital movie?
Spy Kids was before Sin City. So Spy Kids 2.
But were those digital?
He was really the early beta tester for so much of the technology that then has gone on to grow through today.
And dominate,
So it's pretty amazing. But on this movie, so Grindhouse, it was their buddy movie. They came up with the idea together. They knew why they wanted to do it. And Quentin, who is an absolute believer and lover of film, said, "You know what, Robert? I'll do digital on this one." And then he, as a producer, was there in addition to being an actor on Planet Terror. So he was there all the time. And I think it worked out great, because then he could go take a little burden off of Robert. It was a lot of action in that movie.
But he did not sell him. Quentin still shooting film, am I correct?
What he ended up doing, and we've been talking about it, and I was like, wow, this is going to be interesting and exciting, because even on Kill Bill, like, it was filmed, but there were some things that kind of changed the methodology that I was like, oh no, someone didn't fully explain this to him. But he made do and got it done, and he was one of the first DIs, unbeknownst to, it didn't quite get sold, but it was fine, and it came up beautiful for Kill Bill. And then as we got going on Planet Terror, he's like, I don't know that I want to do this digital thing. I think after watching Robert, because he was on set all the time, and as much as he could see the advantages, he also could see what he really wanted to do for his Grindhouse movie was going to be a science. So we ended up doing tests to figure out, even with film, how you muck it up in the greatest way possible to give it those scratches and edges and things. So we did go back to film for Death Proof, and again, it was also a new science within that world for how we then got the Grindhouse of it all. So
right, yeah.
He's never shot digital except for his scene that he's credited with shooting in Sin City for Robert. So.
Well, for me, Quentin was so wonderful. He's just so knowledgeable about movies, and he's got kind of a bright, and maybe it's because he's making a movie, like fun, like feeling about him. Now, he wasn't directing that movie, so I don't know if does he go into a different mode when he directs, or...
He's always fun. It's like we have a saying, and he has a saying, and we say it on the sets. It's like, we're going to do one more take. And the crew goes, why? And then we all go, because we love making movies. And he has a blast and wants to have a blast while he's shooting.
Oh, wonderful.
Has the people, his AD, that he loves to work with, and some people he's used to seeing. Darren Parness, who was Robert's, on-set dresser. He essentially moved to LA and worked on Death Proof and then stayed here. And he's someone he's always got to see. Greg Nicotero, who you both would know.
Yeah.
Someone he always loves to see when he's making a movie, which Greg is now a director of movies, TV.
He was
so
the
many things.
showrunner on The Walking Dead,
Yes.
which he called me, and I did an episode in their final season, and I've seen quite a bit of Greg.
Hard to get Greg, but he is a critical part of everything and Quentin's enjoyment for making movies. So it's a family. And I've always said, going back to From Dusk Till Dawn, we've got this Rodriguez Tarantino family, and people overlap and work together, and it makes movie making a lot of fun.
You know, I got sent the script From Dusk Till Dawn. We didn't have phones. I didn't know who Robert Rodriguez was. I don't think I really knew who Quentin Tarantino was, but I got sent the script, and the script started out, I can remember like 20 minutes of it. I was like, this is really good, man. This is 25 minutes in. This is really crazy. And then all of a sudden it turned into something completely different, and I just didn't get it. I couldn't get my head around it, so I never even took a meeting on it. Or I don't know if I was auditioning at the time. But you, young man, have got an incredible relationship with Robert. Yeah. I mean, you just keep working, and I don't know why he doesn't keep using me over and over and over and over again. But
Will actually, every time he called me, asked me where you were, and I said, I don't think Mike's working anymore. He said, okay, well then, why don't you read this, Jeff?
Well, one of the things was so amazing about working with Robert, and I remember this when we were at that beef house or whatever it was, our place that I had the recipe for, and Robert used to do something. This is 17 years ago when we were shooting this. Robert used to have a list of shots, so he'd have 8 or 10 shots to finish the scene that we were going to shoot that day that was 3 pages long or something like that. So Robert would shoot his master and then come in for like a second, smaller kind of master. And then he would start covering the 3 shots and 2-shot singles and all this sort of stuff, and then tights. And while he was shooting, he would edit the first shot into the second shot, then the third shot. So while we were shooting it, he was editing it. And so by the time we got done finishing shooting the scene, now you probably remember this.
Yeah, he'd have his editor in the whole setup right there at his video village, as it were.
Yeah.
And they'd be editing in between, and he'd be picking on his guitar, messing around with music, and it was a constant flow. It was this constant motion.
But he had the scene after we shot the scene. He'd say, "Come on over and take a look. Yeah. This is what it's going to look like in the movie theater." And he had already cut it together. The scene was already cut. And then he had some source music. He loves music. He's a musician. So he'd bring up some source music and play that music. And I have a pretty good memory when it comes to this kind of stuff. That was the exact cut that you saw in the movie theater, was that rough cut that he showed us. Who does that? Who does that even now? Like, nobody does that. No. Hey, he was fantastic. Another thing, and then I'm going to get to you. I promise.
Take your time, brother. I'm enjoying it.
I like talking about me.
Yeah. Don't worry. And when you ask me a question, Mike, I'm going to talk about you. Okay. No, but continue, please.
One of there are 2 things that I want to say about Robert that were really wonderful on that movie. And one was the fact that Robert, if you remember correctly, Jeff, said like, hey, I've got a script here. Everybody likes it and everything. But if you got an idea, if you have any thoughts, if you want to write something down, I'll take a look at it, and if I think it's reasonable, I'll shoot it. Well, that was like putting a whatever in front of me, man. I'm like, okay. Well, and I did write a 2-page scene for Grindhouse and gave it to Robert, and Robert shot it. He shot the scene that I wrote. He took time away from, he took time, half a day or whatever, to shoot the scene. Now, it didn't end up in the movie, but, the fact that he was sort of willing, because Robert knows exactly what he wants. So the fact that he was willing to kind of like,
I think when
Mike.
Somebody's that secure with their vision, and at the same time flexible, haven't you found that with the great ones that you work with?
Yes.
There's such a comfort and security that they have about their vision that there's an openness that they want to hear from everybody.
Yes.
And I think by the same token, there's when we and others are working with people like that, there's a respect for that vision, and there's a clarity that you can see and feel. So you don't overindulge by just throwing anything in there. All ideas, they almost become so wonderfully refined and loose but tight at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel opens the window to the magic to happen on a set. It's just when, if I may, when I was, and I know you want to talk about this later, but if I can talk about
Clint.
No, actually, John Huston. But it is about, this story came out when we were, because Peter Vertel told me the story about John Huston when he was doing an interview, and I'm paraphrasing the question that was asked. The interviewer asked John, Mr. Huston, about what do you attribute to pulling such great performances and Academy-nominated performances out of your actors. Now, I'm paraphrasing that, but I do remember what the answer was.
Huston's answer?
Huston said, I create the space for actors to work in, and then I protect that space. And that's what all we can ask for, and more when we get it from the people like Robert and Quentin, and again, which we'll talk about later. I got it from Kevin Costner. That kind of, because as much as we can prepare or think about or know about a character or the story we're involved in, I think when we are most comfortable and given that space, and anybody in a creative space is given that and protected, even more comes out. Things we never thought about. It's like protecting the sandbox for the children to play in, and the imagination flies. And going back to what you said, I think that's Robert and Quentin and Kevin and Clint and so many wonderful actors that we've been fortunate enough to, directors that we've been fortunate enough to work with, gave us that space and they protected it.
I always got to say Jim Cameron when you're throwing
absolutely. I mean, you've got to.
I have to say that.
Which,
and he's also worked with Robert, right?
And I worked with on Alita Battle Angel.
Well, I know. I haven't gotten to the fact that I don't know what you're doing to Robert. You're getting all the parts, but I know you worked on Alita Battle Angel. And Robert, Jim Cameron called Robert Rodriguez, this was, before Alita Battle Angel, brilliant. Okay? Jim Cameron does not throw that word around, and I can remember when he called him brilliant, and that's Jim had, and I've told this story before, but Jim had, after I went in and did, he had done Titanic, and Titanic won a bunch of Academy Awards. Highest grossing movie of all time was going to be and it turned out to be for 20 years, highest grossing movie of all time. I was on the lot. Jim heard I was on the lot, called me over. I came over. Hey, congratulations, wonderful. Best picture, best this, best that, all this and that, And I said, now what? How do you top that? I swear to God, this is without. I remember them opening the desk that he was sitting out and pulling out two scripts. One was called Avatar. It was a script, and the other one was called Alita, Battle Angel. It was a script, both of them. And I was like, I didn't know what Alita Battle Angel meant. I didn't know what Avatar meant. I was like, what? And I said, well, cool. Which one are you going to do, Jim? Jim says, Michael, I have to wait for the technology to catch up to my vision of what these movies should be. So he waited 12 effing years to do eventually he decided to do Avatar. And because Avatar turned into $1 billion franchise and turned into what it turned into, he just didn't have time. So what does he do with Alita? He gives it to who he thinks probably is the best director out there for that material. And Jim isn't going to ask somebody to do something for him if he doesn't think this is the best person, for it. And he did Alita: Battle Angel, and it's they're amazing. I just want to say one last thing about Grindhouse, and that was that Josh Brolin was on Grindhouse, and this is before Josh blew up. Okay, Josh and I, we used to run around, and we used to have a lot of fun, and we used to make fun of each other. And but this was before really that he had blown up, and he was asked by the Cohen Brothers to come in to wherever back to California, whatever, to do an audition. And he was right in the middle of shooting his stuff in Grindhouse. Like, it was like day after day after day, and he needed to be there. And so he couldn't go work, and he couldn't go audition for them. And this is way before you send tapes to people. Nobody was doing any of that kind of stuff. So Robert, during lunch, when most people are relaxing, Robert got Josh and Marley. I forget her last name. She
Marley
was
Shelton.
What is it?
Shelton.
Shelton. Got them together. They got the material, and Robert shot the scene.
Yep.
They shot the scene that Josh was asked to audition for, sent it off to the Coen Brothers, and although I've heard there might have been another meeting or something more to that than that, he ends up getting the role, and his career changed from that point on. And he's a great actor and a wonderful guy.
Back.
What's that, Jim?
There was no looking back.
No, there was no looking back.
And you might tell them what the film is. You mentioned the Coen Brothers, but it's No Country for Old Men.
No Country for Old Men, yeah, of course.
And you just hadn't mentioned it. I wanted to listen to see it. And that was the. And I remember when that happened. It was fascinating. It was, again, going back to the generosity of these wonderful filmmakers, and knowing what that audition and that filmed or taped audition would do at the time, and that blasted Josh into the that next place.
Yeah,
beautiful,
absolutely.
Yeah.
You are doing